My name is Jacquelyn Benton, and I'm going to be reading from the section from Dallas, Texas. The exact title is A National Tragedy, the Human Spirit. And I'm going to be pulling from the passage, the section on the assassination of President Kennedy. John F. Kennedy was nearing the end of the third year of his first term when he had become America's 35th president. He owed that victory to the financial backing of his father and his televised presidential debate with Richard Nixon. After that, the image of youth and modernity he and his wife Jackie projected had taken over. Parents of two young children, John and Jackie had also lost a son prematurely, further endearing them to the nation. As a result, throngs awaited their arrival in the Dallas streets on November 22, 1963. We teachers had all wanted to go see the president, but had been told that we'd better be on the job that day. So we were, though nearly half of our students had opted to see the president instead. However, those at school, as well as the staff, experienced the horror of seeing him struck down on television, which was traumatic enough. But then the other students began returning. Many had just seen the president in the parade, waving to him as his car went over the divide, not realizing he had been shot and already pronounced dead. As a result, everybody was traumatized, our school a microcosm of the nation. Yet all these years later, I still recall what one student who had seen JFK get shot said. "Mrs. Williams, there were 3 different people shooting at that man." When I asked what he was talking about, he said that he had been on the other side of the bridge when he saw 2 men on the trestle shooting down at the car that held the president, first lady, and Governor Connally, while the 3rd shot had come from a man atop a building. He ended saying, "You know, Mrs. Williams, I come from East Dallas, and we be knowing about those bullets." I have wondered what happened to that child, because I said to him then that he should never ever tell anybody else what he had told me, because it was not safe. Before the president was killed, anti-Kennedy coloring books were being circulated, but disappeared following his death. However, scatterings had been retrieved from trash bins and left at the church I was attending. One thing I learned about the culture of South Dallas was that explosive information, like my students' recollections, best stayed sealed if one valued one's life. One reason I selected this passage was because if you were around at that time, you would remember where you were when that happened. So my first reason was just that it took me back to my own recollections. I was a senior at East High School in Denver, Colorado. And what I remember specifically is that I was in the lunchroom. It was my lunch hour. The lunchroom was full. But I remember that the principal, Mr. Caldwell, Robert Caldwell, came into the lunchroom, and when he came in, then he went and stood on top of a table that had been placed in the middle of the floor, and he told us what had happened to the president. That's my personal memory from that time. However, in terms of Benny's recollections, what stand out to me, first of all, are just what her students said. Because I have always heard that there was one shooter when President Kennedy was assassinated. And the second thing, of course, was the advice that she gave to her student in terms of that information that he gave her, that he had best, she thought it was safe for him to keep that to himself. The other thing I was struck by was when she mentioned that anti-Kennedy coloring books had been circulating. I had never heard anything like that before. And then, of course, the last thing was when she said that people at her church had received some of the scatterings of what someone found in the trash and delivered to the church. And then the final thing is I just was reminded of I guess I would say maybe the only positive legacy of that day, which was that the Kennedy Center Honors, which is still coming on now and has been coming on every year since that happened, still comes on. And I always try to see each one every year because it's a celebration of all of the talent in this country. So it's for all of those reasons that I chose this passage from Benny's book.